Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to part 3 of my Alexandro Jodorowsky season, and we've finally made it to the Holy Mountain in 1973. It's taken a while, but we've finally climbed the Holy Mountain, and who knows what we'll find. This is from the Arrow box set of Jodorowsky. Arrow has since released The Holy Mountain and El Topo on single releases. This is the deluxe one with the Blu-ray and the CD music, reversible art, and stunning art cards from images from the film. This is the film for me that is Jodorowsky's masterpiece. El Topo is his most famous one, but this is the one, for me, that confirms what you believe Jodorowsky to be. If you think he's a charlatan who just has a hodgepodge of images and symbols and metaphors and is pretentious, then this will be the film to confirm it. Or if you think he's some kind of genius and a visionary, then this is the film that will confirm that belief too. After the success of El Topo and celebrity fans like John Lennon, for example, this was the film that he got to do anything he wanted. So this is a film where he had the most control, probably. The budget of El Topo was about $400,000. This one is over $1 million, and Jodorowsky wrote, directed, stars in the film. He did the production design, which is insane, some of the greatest production design in history. He also did the music, or helped out in the music, so it is really the work of an auteur. My fondest memory of the Holy Mountain is actually taking 3 or 4 people I work with to the Glasgow Film Theatre when it had a restored print of the Holy Mountain, and just to watch people's reactions who'd never seen a Jodorowsky film before. They were moved, they were bewildered, they laughed in a lot of places, they were upset in a lot of places, and that's just the joy of the Holy Mountain. A simple story of a journey to reach the truth of existence, to attain immortality perhaps, but it is Jodorowsky we're talking about. There's 2 kind of sources for the inspiration of the film. There's a Russian mystic who Jodorowsky was into, allegedly after he slept with his daughter. The daughter told him all about this Russian mystic, and also a French novel called Mount Analog, where the author did actually die before he could finish it. The extras on the Arrow release are fantastic with all these ones. It's a 4K restoration, newly translated subtitles. There's a commentary by Jodorowsky, and there's another Jodorowsky Remembers the Holy Mountain. Then there's an introduction with Richard Pena again, from the Professor of Film Studies at Columbia. There's an interview with Pablo Leder, who's a personal assistant and also acted in El Topo and the Holy Mountain. And there's a really good video essay, The A to Z of the Holy Mountain, by writer Ben Cobb, who also had personal interactions with Jodorowsky. So that goes through, strangely enough, the whole alphabet, picking out a feature of the Holy Mountain. I do have copious notes. I've got like 2 pages of notes, which I don't usually have on other films. But this film's kind of special. So the first section really sets the stage. It introduces to this thief slash Christ character, which allegedly at one point was going to be played by George Harrison, who obviously knew John Lennon, but George Harrison didn't want to show his bare bottom, so that fell through. So the kind of thief character is played by somebody who looks a lot like George Harrison. I should say again up front, this is another film where there's lots of animal death. There's lots of animals in the film. There's pumas and toads and chameleons and sheep and horses and cows and vultures. What else do we have? Chickens, and there's a chimp, obviously. In the A to Z feature, Ben Cobb talks about the chimp who had been in films previously to El Topo, but didn't make a film after El Topo, and maybe it's because his mind was blown. There is one scene, and Jodorowsky confirms in the extras, where they got the chimp to meditate, and the chimp gives a wonderful performance. We're first introduced to the chimp with a group of prostitutes, and then he follows the characters on their journey to the Holy Mountain in various forms of clothing, Macs and various other things. But the chimpanzee didn't have a career after the Holy Mountain. Once you've reached the Holy Mountain, I suppose you don't really need to do any more. But I digress, which I'll be doing quite a lot during this video, because it's quite easy to digress when you're talking about the Holy Mountain. So yes, there's animal death in the film. There's male nudity, female nudity, violence, which is done in a very Jodorowsky type way. So if you're offended by that kind of thing, then it's probably not going to be an enjoyable experience. So like I say, we're first introduced to society at large. There's a military presence. There are people in firing squads, people being shot by the military, and we're introduced to this thief character. And this whole first 15-20 minutes of the film's fairly wordless. And then we're introduced to this large orange tower, which did actually exist in Mexico. And this is where the alchemist lives. The alchemist played by Jodorowsky. There is a theory that the alchemist is actually the reincarnation of El Topo by the end of El Topo, if you know how that film ends. So there's a theory that the alchemist might actually be the El Topo character on a different plane. So then the thief becomes his disciple and learns the way of this guru figure, the alchemist. As Jodorowsky said, he actually had to employ a guru to come in and show him what a guru was all about, because he didn't know at the time. And then we're introduced to these other characters who will go on the journey to find the 9 immortals on the Holy Mountain and give them the secret of immortality and existence and life itself. So that's the basic framework of the film. I'm just going to go through, and I hope you'll forgive me for looking at my notes, but I'm just going to go through some of the imagery of just the first section of the film outside of the Alchemist Tower. I mean, the film itself opens with almost a snapshot of what the film is about. The first shot is of these 2 twins, who aren't really twins, who are kind of dressed like Marlene Dietrich, dressed like movie stars with their blonde hair and their shiny garments. And the alchemist, played by Jodorowsky, in black. he comes back when he meets the thief in white, but he's in black here. Amazing production design. You've probably all seen it, the black and white walls. Jodorowsky says he employed lots of old people to do the painting for all of these sets. And he systematically undresses them, shaves their hair, so it's almost taking away of the glitz and glamour to get to the truth within us all. And that's pretty much what all the characters undertake as they go to this journey up the Holy Mountain. And then we're introduced by the thief character, who is in the street. His face is covered in flies. All of a sudden a puma turns up, there's frogs, there's tarot cards. He meets a little friend who's an amputee. Jodorowsky was a big fan of Todd Browning, and he loves these amputees. We have kids with painted genitals. We have a cart full of bloody bodies. We have firing squads. We have carcasses on metal crucifixes carried by soldiers. I mean, the first time you watch the film, the first 15-20 minutes is almost overwhelming. It's just, look at that image, look at that image, look at that image. Do the images mean anything? It's entirely up to you. Again, no doubt there's been university courses on the imagery and symbolism in the Holy Mountain and Jodorowsky films in general. I'm not going to do that. There's rich people on their knees. Birds fly out of people's bullet holes. And then we get to one of the famous parts of the film, the Great Toad and Chameleon Circus, where they reenact the conquest of Mexico using toads and chameleons, which get blown to bits. There's a scene where the thief character is carrying the cross. When this film opened in Cannes, it was a bit controversial in 1973. We have a scene of an overweight Roman sitting inside the carcass of a dead cow. They then make a plaster cast of the thief. He wakes up in a room full of casts of himself, which again is just like stunning production design. There's the soldiers dancing with men. Obviously the chimp is introduced with the prostitutes who then follow the thief / Christ figure. There's a nice image of a rotting Bible. There's a cardinal in bed with Jesus. The thief eats Jesus' face. And then he is lifted in red and blue balloons. They lift the effigy of the thief, the Christ image, to the sky. There's tables of fish, bread and grapes, which is obviously a little bit religious. And then this yellow fish hook comes down from the orange tower, and the thief jumps on it and is taken to the alchemist's laboratories. So that's like the first 20 minutes of the film, and you are kind of hit by this imagery. You're trying to process all of this stuff, but it does hold up in repeated viewing, and you can make up your own little psychoanalysis of each image. The alchemist, this time in white, asks if the thief character wants gold, and of course he does. So he proceeds to make gold out of excrement that the thief provides in a nice little jar. So to prove that, within yourself, even the things that you get rid of, you can turn into something positive. And there's also a hippo in a bathtub, and a pelican. I forgot the pelican, and I forgot he has like a pustule in the back of his neck, and when that's cut open, blue blood comes out, and they pull an octopus, obviously, and that means something. And we're introduced the written woman, who is a naked woman who has all these tattoos and writings, And again, in the extras, Ben Cobb does a good job of going through what all these symbols mean. So I'm not going to do that. And he is taking the thief under his wing to try and teach him. There's an amazing room of mirrors, which is just, again, amazing production design. There's a great scene where he gives him this silver hammer to try and break this rock, and of course the thief can't do it, and then the alchemist takes the hammer and just taps the rock, and of course it splits to show its soul, which is a glass sphere inside. Then he's introduced to this room of avatars, these models of these people. And then we're into the next section of the film, which is the introduction of these disciples that are going to go with the alchemist and the thief to the holy mountain. And this is another just section where there's so much going on, so much imagery, but looking forward, it's almost prophetic. So we get characters that are each planet. It's obviously the tarot, there's images of tarot in the film, and astronomy and all that fun stuff. So we're introduced to these this group of powerful people. We have a character who deals with the comfort industry and making people feel better about themselves. There's a planet of Venus, who deals with attachable muscles, as we see the models with calf muscles and glutes, and again, kind of foreshadowing plastic surgery. You get artificial faces and masks, so anybody can wear a different face. There's a lot of really good stuff in this section. We're introduced to a weapons manufacturer, called Mars. It's her planet. And again, there's guns for all occasions. There's psychedelic shotguns for the hippie generation, grenade necklaces. There's a gun for each religion, which is really funny and probably blasphemous at the time. We're introduced to Jupiter, who is in the art industry and makes living art with body parts that you can squeeze and prod and insert yourself in. And there's a wonderful love machine, which is another incredible production design and another incredible scene. We have Saturn as a toy manufacturer, but it makes war toys. The factory is just employed by old people that make all the toys for children. But they essentially work for the government. So, and they make the example that they're going to go to war with Peru in the near future. So they have these children that they pretty much brainwash into hating Peru. They produce comics like Marvel comics, all against the evil Peruvian monster. There's just lots of wonderful, again, images and ideas. It's one of those films that perhaps you could argue there's too many ideas going on in sections, and it does just kind of wash over you. So it's just born for repeat viewings to get all these wonderful little details. The person who represents Uranus seems to live with an older woman, and they have, like, for some reason, a really tall toilet, which when I went to the cinema with people from work, one person just laughed their ass off at that continually and continues to, because again, images in this film will stay with you forever, pretty much. And he turns out he's the financial advisor to the president, and he produces a report for the president which says you're going to have to kill 4 million people in the next year and a half, to continue to make the country profitable. So the president phones somebody up and says we need to go ahead with the gas churches, the gas schools, gas whorehouses. So again, it's just this idea that these state-built churches and schools also are going to double as gassing people. Again, there's some nice ideas in here. The next character represents Neptune, and he's the chief of police. And this is another famous scene we're introduced to him, and he has a massive gun, like a 8-foot long gun. But we get to the famous castration scene and the hall, or his sanctuary of 1,000 testicles, because all his soldiers are castrated, which again has wonderful production design. And knowing Jodorowsky, it probably is 1,000 jars of testicles. Again, there's artistic and expressionist versions of killing of students. Again, this is 1973 in South America, so as somebody says in the extras, the democratic kind of governments were all being replaced by more dictatorships during this period. So there's lots of protests, lots of students being killed, and Jodorowsky shows this in an expressionistic way, a very colourful way. Next we have a character who's Pluto, and he specialises in architecture, and again some brilliant ideas. We're introduced to him and he's playing a game of hide and seek with these children dressed as Mickey Mouse. A very playful, in this modern architecture house, very playful scene. And then he's giving a presentation where instead of giving people, nice places to stay in, and it would be much better just to give them coffin shaped apartments. So it's basically just coffins, and then we see the model, and it's just going to be rows and rows and rows of coffins for people to live in. And they say, well, yeah, we'll feed them at the factory, and then they just go home and essentially just sleep in their coffin, and it cuts down costs. So that's lovely. And then we kind of the eighth person, who's Mercury, is the written woman, who the first time I watched the film didn't actually realise that, but in subsequent watches realised that she's Mercury, or she's a representation of Mercury. And then before they leave, they all have to burn their money, they all have to burn the effigies of them in that rotating room. There's lots of rooms that Jodorowsky creates, and the camera spins round, and again, disorientation. So they have to burn their money and destroy their self-image, essentially, before they can begin on the journey. And then they go on the journey up the mountain. They have to give away themselves. They have to get rid of all their belongings. And they cross the water, they climb the mountain, which is very difficult. They reach this bizarre German character who is a bit camp, and introduced to the Pantheon Bar, which is basically where all the disciples and the people who go to try and find the Holy Mountain but never actually get there. They meet some imposters who think they've found the truth through drugs or strength or whatever, but of course that's not the truth that these disciples and the alchemists are after, because they want the proper truth. And then there's a scene where they're shown their death, which again is just more ridiculous imagery. There's tigers and horses in mud. There's again a sheep gets a nasty end. There's fighting dogs. There's cows copulating. There's a tree of dead chickens. There's tarantulas covered in one character. There's an old man who's half man, half woman, who ejaculates into the mouth of one of the characters, but instead of breasts, they have like small wild cats. Yeah, a lot of it, it's like, did I actually see that, or did I dream that once? And it's like, no, you do actually see it. This is the Holy Mountain, and this is Jodorowsky. And then they get to the top of the Holy Mountain, and that's where I'll stop, because I have to talk about the ending. And if you haven't seen the film, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but I have to talk about the ending, because you can't talk about the Holy Mountain without talking about the end of the Holy Mountain. So if you haven't seen the film, for me it is Jodorowsky's masterpiece, or it might be a load of twaddle. That's entirely up to you. It looks, better than it's ever looked before. It is a film about the journey, as most of his films are, and it's sad that, with Fando Elise, El Topo and the Holy Mountain, he was certainly on a path, and then that got disrupted, and his career never really turned out the way it was kind of headed. His producer, Alan Klein, who was the manager of the Beatles, I believe, one of the managers of the Beatles, he gave him $200,000 to do the story of O. But Jodorowsky didn't really want to do that, and allegedly Jodorowsky kept the money, so that was why Klein pretty much made it impossible to see El Topo and the Holy Mountain for like 30 years. And Jodorowsky never really continued what he was doing until much later. Because again, he's another filmmaker who didn't do that many features, for various reasons. But it would have been interesting if nature had taken its course and he was allowed to do like another film after the Holy Mountain of his own kind of making. Granted, this is strictly cult, and it wasn't in box office. Again, he talks about the extras. It's the film that he was really free, because he wasn't worried about, making money or trying to please the whole world with this film. He just did what he felt like doing, and it's all the better for it. But he is one of those cases that he maybe just didn't make enough films, but granted, what he made were pretty spectacular. So if you haven't seen the film, I'm not going to ruin the ending for you, so if you go away, watch the film, and then come back, because I have to talk about the ending. So the ending, the disciples get there, they see a table with these characters sitting at it, so they think that's the 9 immortals. But of course, when they get there, it's actually just Jodorowsky and 9 dummies. So they all sit down, and Jodorowsky just gives this wonderful speech of, we lived in a fantasy and we came alive in this journey, but this isn't reality. And he puts up his hand and says, "Zoom back, camera," and of course it zooms back. Obviously you can see all the technical people, and again he says, this isn't reality. We need to go into the world and actually find reality and find the truth. Real life awaits us. And they turn the table over and pretty much just walk off, and the screen goes white. The first time I saw it, it just absolutely blew me away. I still think it's arguably the greatest ending of any film. It's arguably one of the best statements about cinema. The fact that we sometimes get caught up in films as real life, and of course they're not real, they are just fantasies. We get caught up in characters, and some people with some films get really worked up about owning that character, and the intellectual property of those characters, and when people remake films, they go, how can you remake that character? I would never do that, and it's like, yeah, but that's not real life. Cinema is not real life. As cinema verite as you can do, but as soon as you put a camera in front of something, it changes that thing or that person. And it's just an amazing ending. We've been in this world with these characters on this journey for the meaning of life, but Jodorowsky knows it's not that simple. You're not going to reach a table at the top of a mountain and find the meaning of life. You have to find the meaning of life yourself. I mean, he says in the interview on the extras, what is the meaning of life? Just to try and be happy, just to survive in this world that, let's be honest, is getting worse by the day. For me, it's a profoundly moving end of the film, but it's also just a wonderful statement about cinema, about art itself. And to me, it is a film that just shows that Jodorowsky is a genius. I don't know what kind of genius. Whether he's a genius all the time, I don't know. But for me, certainly in The Holy Mountain, throughout all the imagery, the assault on the senses, times you'll laugh, times you'll wince, but in the end, it is a really wonderful film. For me, it's his masterpiece, although El Topo is kind of obviously more famous for kicking off the whole midnight movie thing. But The Holy Mountain is just a stunning piece of work. Watch it on as big a screen as you can. It's just a phenomenal film with a phenomenal ending. That blew me away, continues to blow me away, and is deeply profound, or it might be complete nonsense. That's entirely up to you. So thanks very much for watching. We finally got there. We finally climbed the Holy Mountain. Who knows what the answer is? Maybe we'll find out one day. So I hope you enjoyed part 3 of Jodorowsky. Hopefully it won't take me quite as long to do part 4, which won't be Tusk, because I've never seen Tusk and I can't seem to get a copy of Tusk in 1980, which was 7 years later. So I will be talking about the film after Tusk in the next episode of my Jodorowsky season. So thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you made it to the top of the Holy Mountain, and hopefully you'll join me again for the next part in the series. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.